everyone. Bonjour à tous. Thank you so much for getting up early today to be part of something really important. Right now, more than ever, Canada is ready for a change. And that change begins with the leader that you're about to hear from. Many of you knew my father, Brian Mulroney, not just as a Prime Minister, but as someone who believed in building a stronger, more confident Canada. He once said, leaders should strive to build a Canada that is stronger, more united, more generous, and more confident than the one they inherited. That's what leadership is about. That's the work of nation building, and it lies ahead of us now. When a 24-year-old Pierre Poilievre first ran for Parliament in 2004, my father saw something in him. He believed in him. Believe it or not, my dad was one of Pierre's first donors to his first election campaign in Nepean, Carleton. And what he saw then is what Canadians see now. Someone with clarity, conviction, and a belief in Canada's potential. I've known Pierre a long time, not just as a public figure, but as a friend. He often turned to my dad for political counsel. Over time, he and I have had conversations about issues that we care deeply about, including the future of francophone communities in Canada. La francophonie canadienne, particulièrement celle en situation minoritaire, est un enjeu crucial qui nous tient profondément à cœur. Pour Pierre, il ne s'agit pas d'une priorité de façade ou d'un calcul politique. C'est une richesse qu'il valorise pleinement et façonne son engagement dans la vie publique. What's been especially meaningful to me, and maybe even surprising, is hearing about Pierre from my children. My husband Andrew and I have 4 kids between the ages of 17 and 20. And our daughter Miranda is here with us today. Even our least political child, obviously not Miranda, told me that Pierre's message speaks to her, that it cuts through. Because like so many kids across this country, they see the future and they wonder what it holds and if they'll be okay. They understand that if things don't change, their future, the future of their generation, will be harder, less free, and less full of promise than the Canada that we grew up believing in. And that's what this is about. After 10 years of Liberal rule, life is more expensive, uncertain, and divided. And that's why this is time for change in Ottawa. Pierre and the Conservative Party have a real plan to make life affordable, restore safety in our streets, build the homes that we need, and unleash industries like energy, agriculture, and advanced manufacturing that will drive lasting prosperity. It's the right plan. In fact, it's so good that the Liberals have taken to plagiarizing it. Just as importantly, Pierre also understands the global moment that we are in. He knows how to stand up for Canada, especially with our largest trading partners. In 1988, my father explained that Canadian leadership means standing tall, even next to giants like the United States. Our citizenship is noble enough and splendid enough on its own, he said, that we don't have to be fearful and timorous in respect of anybody else. Just like my dad, Pierre understands this. President Trump may be around for at least another 4 years. But Canada's path forward does not depend on him, nor should it. It depends on us. Canadians from all walks of life to ensure that we stand strong in the face of his threats. That's what Pierre has been fighting for, in the House of Commons and throughout this campaign. Pierre's plan is the right one for Canada, not because of Donald Trump, but in spite of him. We need to protect our workers in the auto sector. We need to support our farmers and our steel workers. We need to build pipelines, unlock the Ring of Fire, and tear down barriers that hold Canadians back. And we need to stop dividing this country for political gain. We need a leader who will speak to Donald Trump, and when he does, he will speak for all Canadians. And there is only one person in this race who can do both. That's Pierre Poilievre. As someone who has just spent the last few weeks knocking on doors, and who has had the great fortune to travel across this great country, I know Canadians are frustrated. They're anxious, and some are angry. In my judgment, Pierre Poilievre is the one leader who can channel that emotion into action, into unity, purpose, and a plan to rebuild our country. I believe, just as my father did, that Pierre Poilievre is ready to lead us to a stronger, a more united, and a more prosperous country than the one we inherited. And so with that, it is my great honor to introduce the next Prime Minister of Canada, my friend, Pierre Poilievre.
Le service de votre famille pour l'Ontario et le Canada est une source d'inspiration pour nous tous. Et c'est un moment de grande fierté de vous avoir ici. Évidemment, vous avez un patrimoine exceptionnel que vous avez en même temps que hérité, bâti avec votre famille. Et pendant cette période d'incertitude face à nos amis aux États-Unis, le symbole d'avoir une Mulroney avec nous pour se battre pour notre pays est plus fort que jamais. Merci beaucoup. Votre père doit être très fier de ce que vous avez fait en tant qu'avocate, femme d'affaires et maintenant ministre, président du Conseil du Trésor. Et il doit être très fier de tous vos frères aussi. Votre père est une grande source d'inspiration pour tous en ce qui concerne la question de libre-échange. Évidemment, c'est lui qui a fondé le libre-échange entre nos deux pays. Sa sagesse serait précieuse aujourd'hui. J'aimerais bien pouvoir l'appeler pour chercher ses conseils, mais maintenant, plus que jamais. And I think that we all agree that you and your brothers are carrying on the incredible Mulroney legacy of fighting for Canada, whether serving in business or in law or now in government. The Mulroney name lives on as a legendary force for good in our national conversation. Thank you very much. She's the president of the Treasury Board, so of course if you hear me say the president today, of course I'm talking about Caroline Mulroney. There's another president, but this is the one we love the most. Your father, of course, was a great inspiration to all of us. He founded free trade between Canada and the U.S. And boy, I wish I could pick up the phone and seek his advice right now. But I'm sure he'd be very proud of all Canadians, how they rushed to the defense of our sovereignty and our economy. Canadians feel angry and betrayed and anxious after the President's unprovoked attacks on our sovereignty. We're left wondering how we can end the paralyzing uncertainty and what the future holds. We don't know what today's tariff announcement will bring, how long they will last, or what they will do. But whatever President Trump does, a bunch of things remain undeniably true. One, these tariffs are unjustified. Two, they will hurt people and businesses on both sides of the border. And three, Canada will obviously never be the 51st state. But we need a plan going forward, a plan that is both strong and effective. And I want to break that down into three parts. Obviously, one, we need an immediate response. Two, we need to tackle the dispute after the election, hopefully to bring it to an end. But three, perhaps most important of all, we need a long-term plan to build our economic fortress in Canada so we are never vulnerable to these kinds of threats again. Tout d'abord, notre réponse doit être immédiate. C'est pourquoi il faut imposer des contre-tarifs et cibler des produits dont on n'a pas besoin, qu'on peut acheter ailleurs ou qu'on peut produire ici au Canada, chez nous, afin de décourager des attaques économiques des Américains. On doit aussi préparer pour les impacts sur nos entreprises. Notre réponse doit avoir comme priorité principale de garder les emplois en place. Une fois que le lien est brisé entre travailleurs et entreprises, c'est très difficile de le rétablir. C'est beaucoup plus difficile que les garder en place dans de première place. C'est pourquoi le nouveau gouvernement conservateur lancera un fonds pour la protection des emplois canadiens. Un programme de prêts ciblés temporairement aux entreprises qui sont directement touchées par les tarifs pour aider à maintenir les travailleurs dans leurs emplois. First, our immediate response must be targeted reciprocal tariffs, targeted narrowly at those American goods we don't need, can make ourselves, or buy elsewhere to maximize impact on the Americans while minimizing impact on ourselves. Secondly, we must be prepared to protect jobs. Keeping Canadians working should be our top priority. And that's why we need to focus on maintaining the link. If a worker loses his job, it's much harder, longer, and actually more expensive for the government to try and get him back into employment than it is to try and keep him working in the interim period while this dispute is on. The Conservative government, if elected at the end of this month, will launch a Keeping Canadians Working Fund, a targeted temporary loan program for businesses that are directly hit, helping them keep workers on the job. Very similar to the type of program that John Baird initiated when we were in the Harper government during the great global recession. Binding people to their jobs, keeping their paychecks going while we can get through this trade dispute will help keep the horizon bright and keep our economy stable. But where do we go from there? The second part of the plan is we have to try to end this trade dispute. There's no guarantee, but we have to try. Dès le premier jour de mon mandat comme Premier ministre, je vais proposer au président d'accélérer les négociations pour conclure le nouvel accord sur le commerce et la sécurité et remplacer l'accord Canada-États-Unis-Mexique. L'accord doit être renégocié l'année prochaine, peu importe. Ce n'est pas une question de si, mais une question de quand. Alors pourquoi pas le faire directement et rapidement? Pour éliminer l'incertitude des tarifs qui pèsent sur nos travailleurs et nos entreprises, il faut agir pour mettre fin à ce chaos. On day one, as Prime Minister, I will propose to the President to accelerate renegotiations of CUSMA, bringing in a new deal on trade and security. CUSMA must be renegotiated anyway, next year. Why wait? Why not get it done now? Why not end the uncertainty that is paralyzing both sides of the border and that is also costing us jobs today? We should set a firm date to finalize a new deal. And I will propose that both countries pause tariffs while we hammer out that deal. Keeping destructive tariffs in place kills jobs on both sides of the border and so it serves no purpose at all. It does not make sense to go on killing jobs, disrupting markets, and weakening both our economies with on-again, off-again tariffs for months on end as Canadian businesses and workers live in paralyzed terror. In the meantime, during negotiations, suspension of tariffs would have to go both ways. Either they take them off or we would not. We would require this to be fully reciprocal as we work towards getting a deal. And as for the deal itself, any good negotiator would tell you that he wouldn't put his cards on the table before sitting down to talk. But Canadians do have a right to know what our red lines are. Donc, premièrement, je vais protéger notre frontière, nos ressources, nos fermiers, y compris ceux qui sont soumis à la gestion de l'offre. On va aussi protéger notre eau douce et nos travailleurs dans l'industrie d'automobile. Je tiens aussi à souligner qu'il est hors de question de négocier sur notre souveraineté. Nos lois, notre droit, notre territoire, notre eau, notre ciel, notre culture, nos langues officielles, nos ressources naturelles et nos droits autochtones resteront sous notre contrôle pour toujours. Mark Carney et Donald Trump sont unis dans leur opposition à la protection de la langue française. M. Carney veut le contester dans les cours, M. Trump veut le contester dans les négociations. Les États-Unis n'ont pas le droit de dicter nos lois linguistiques ou aucune autre loi canadienne. Le Canada est un pays fier et souverain. Ce n'est pas négociable. On va protéger notre souveraineté. Deuxièmement, je m'engage à ce que tous les revenus qu'on récolte en conséquence d'une meilleure entente de libre-échange va financer une militaire plus grande, plus forte, pour protéger notre souveraineté et élargir notre présence dans le Grand Nord. On va pouvoir respecter nos engagements de l'OTAN de 2% et être un partenaire fiable pour nos alliés. On ne doit pas le faire pour plaire à Donald Trump. On doit le faire parce que c'est nécessaire pour être un pays fier et souverain d'avoir un militaire fort et bien financé. C'est ça le but d'être notre pays, c'est de protéger notre territoire avec nos propres forces armées au lieu de dépendre toujours des Américains. As I said, Canadians have the right to know what red lines I will draw in order to protect our country in these inevitable negotiations that any future Prime Minister will have to have and have quickly. So let me be clear. First, I will protect our control over our border, our security, our resources, our farmers, including our supply-managed farmers, our fresh water, our automotive workers. Also, we will protect our sovereignty, our laws, our currency, our dollar, our land, our waters, our sky, our culture, our official languages, and our resources and Indigenous rights will not be under the control of any other country. This is non-negotiable. We will protect Canada's sovereignty. Second, for years, the Americans have demanded we do more in defense. The truth is, Canadians have been demanding exactly the same thing. And so I will commit that any extra revenue generated from expanded trade with the United States will go right into our armed forces. We will hit our 2%.
We will take back control of our Arctic waters from the Chinese and the Russians. We will rebuild our military and will become a truly sovereign nation with a strong armed forces that can protect us. We will not do this to please President Trump. We will do it because it is right for Canada, especially in light of America's growing ambivalence towards NATO. It is important for Canada to step up and show its strength. Canada will carry its own weight. We will secure the North. We will put our more boots on the ground, submarines and ships in the sea, and planes in the air. Americans will be able to sleep sound at night, knowing that we fully defend our North. It will also allow us to improve NORAD to deter, detect, and destroy incoming threats to our shared security. Third, while we will agree to work with the Americans to secure our border on fentanyl and illegal migration, I'll also demand that they do their part to stop sending illegal guns across our border. Ensure that President Trump keeps his side of the bargain. How can we trust that he'll honor any new agreement when, let's be honest, he violated the last one, the one he negotiated? Well, that's the situation we're now in. We must make sure that the next deal has commitments that we make on defense, border cooperation, and market access that we can withdraw if and when he decides to break the deal and tariff us again. We will hold up our end of the bargain only as long as he holds up his. That is how we create the leverage to protect against a president suddenly changing his mind and breaking his word. Well, we can't control what the president does. You know, my father isn't a particularly religious man, but he did teach me the Serenity Prayer. God help me to accept the things I cannot change, change the things I can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. And we know that we can't control the decisions the president makes, but we know we can control the decisions we make about our own destiny here at home. The president will have a fork in the road. Either he'll continue to hold the threat of tariffs over our heads for the next 3.5 years, or we'll secure a deal that provides permanent relief to our economies, now paralyzed by uncertainty. We don't know which way he'll go. So Canada must be prepared either way. A renewed trade deal with the Americans would be ideal, but it's not the entire solution to our economy. A credible plan to deal with Trump must prepare Canada for growth with or without reliable trade with the Americans. Unfortunately, after the lost Liberal decade, we are in an unprecedented position of weakness. Our economy is stagnant, our workers are poorer, our industry has been left exposed to President Trump's threats. And let's be clear about this. We have had the single worst growth of any country in the G7 over the last Liberal decade. The worst part of that growth happened while Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. In fact, our per capita GDP is smaller than it was 5 years ago, while the American per capita GDP has grown by 18%. We are projected to have the slowest growth of all of the nearly 40 OECD nations, and that is after 10 years of the Liberals in power. In the first 14 years of this century, Canada had a net investment of American dollars in Canada of about $30 to $100 billion, depending on the year. Right now, after the last Liberal decade, there are $500 billion more Canadian dollars invested in America than the reverse. $500 billion has poured out of our economy into the US. We are more dependent and helpless than ever before, precisely because of the policies that Mark Carney and Justin Trudeau have imposed in this lost decade. Et en ce moment déterminant, les Canadiens doivent poser une seule question. Pourquoi Donald Trump soutient-il Mark Carney? Pourquoi Donald Trump a-t-il choisi Mark Carney comme le gagnant de la prochaine élection? Pensez-vous que Donald Trump a à cœur les intérêts du Canada quand il dit qu'il préfère négocier avec un autre gouvernement libéral? Ou bien est-ce que M. Trump pense qu'il peut obtenir des choses à dépens du Canada? Voici ce que je pense. Donald Trump sait très bien qu'un quatrième mandat libéral sous Mark Carney affaiblirait notre économie encore plus. Il va continuer de dépendre du marché américain. M. Trump sait que M. Carney s'oppose à faire du Canada une superpuissance énergétique. Il sait que Mark Carney poursuivra le programme libéral qui bloque la production d'énergie et la construction de pipelines. Enfin, Mark Carney a déclaré, et je cite, qu'il fallait garder plus de 80% des combustibles fossiles dans la terre. At this big pivotal moment, Canadians have to ask a question. Why is Donald Trump so supportive of Mark Carney? Why is Trump anointed Carney the winner of the next election? Do you think it's because Trump has Canada's best interest at heart? When he says that he'd rather negotiate with the Liberal government? Or is he thinking about what he can get at Canada's expense? Here's what I think. Donald Trump knows that a fourth Liberal term under Mark Carney will make Canada even weaker and poorer than it was over the last decade, more dependent on American markets and vulnerable to his threats. He knows Mr. Carney is opposed to turning Canada into an energy superpower. He knows the Liberal agenda blocking energy production and pipeline construction will keep Donald Trump's thumb over our economy. In fact, Mr. Carney actually said, and I'm quoting here, more than 80% of current fossil fuel reserves would need to stay in the ground. Now, obviously, he means Canadian oil reserves. There would be more oil produced south of the border, profiting the Americans and making us weaker and more reliant. Trump knows that Mr. Carney will keep Justin Trudeau's industrial carbon tax on Canadian industry, as well as Trudeau's cap on Canadian energy, driving business south. And just yesterday, Mark Carney gave a wonderful gift to Donald Trump. He announced he will keep the Liberal No New Pipelines Law C-69 in place. Bill C-69 guarantees there will never again be a pipeline, LNG plant, large-scale mine, or a nuclear project built in this country. It will send hundreds of billions of dollars fleeing south of the border to Trump's America and force us to continue to sell our oil and gas at massive price discounts. When you consider that Mark Carney's keep it in the ground agenda will make us even more dependent on the United States, it becomes pretty clear why Trump wants the Liberals to win a fourth term. The last thing that President Trump wants is a strong Canadian Prime Minister who will turn this country around, turning our country into an economic and resource powerhouse with competitive taxes that is open for business. That might not be good for President Trump, but it is exactly how you put Canada first. The choice in the next election is clear. After the lost Liberal decade, can we afford a fourth term of rising costs and crime and falling economy under America's thumb? Or is it time for a change with a new Conservative government that will put Canada first? A government that will unleash our resources, cut taxes for our workers, bring home our jobs, and stand up to the Americans from a position of strength. That's the decision. We do control. Only we control our natural resources, our tax policy, our competitiveness, and whether Canadians keep more of what they earn and save. The story of Canada is a story of doing big things, of ambitious projects that bind the nation together, uniting us as a people and securing our sovereignty. That's what Brian Mulroney did when he negotiated free trade. That's what John A. Macdonald did with the railway. Canada was not handed to our ancestors. They had to work and sacrifice for it. And whether we were born here or chose to come, we are their heirs. And we have a duty to defend what our ancestors gave us. to build an even better Canada to leave to our children. That is our purpose. That is what we will do. We're a country to think big again. It's time to challenge ourselves, because decline is a choice. But it's not my choice. I choose to build. I choose to grow. I choose to meet the moment with ambition worthy of the men and women who built this great country. My plan for the Canadian economy could not be more different than what you've seen over the last Liberal decade of Carney and Trudeau. I've spent the first week of this campaign setting out ambitious and detailed plans to build our economy so we can stand on our own 2 feet and stand up against foreign threats. It's everything we should have been doing for the last 10 years, everything I said we should do over the last 10 years, and everything that Mark Carney has explicitly opposed over the last 10 years. Dès la première semaine de ma campagne, j'ai proposé une réduction d'impôt de 15% sur le revenu du travailleur moyen afin de récompenser le travail. Une baisse d'impôt pour le réinvestissement au Canada. 0 taxe sur les gains en capital lorsque vous réinvestissez vos gains ici au Canada. Cette baisse d'impôt va ramener des milliards de dollars ici au Canada pour bâtir des pipelines, des oléoducs, des mines, des bâtiments, des autres projets d'envergure qui va créer des emplois et inventer des technologies. Cet élan va nous donner un pouvoir de reprendre le contrôle et relancer notre économie. On va permettre à nos aînés de gagner juste 34 000 s'ils choisissent de travailler sans payer d'impôts pour arrêter de punir les gens qui travaillent fort. On va créer des zones canadiennes prêtes à bâtir, c'est-à-dire des zones où c'est déjà permis, il y a déjà des autorisations à commencer à bâtir des grands projets comme les transmissions, des lignes de transmission, des chemins de fer, des pipelines et d'autres infrastructures essentielles à travers le Canada en contournant les États-Unis et en acheminant nos ressources partout au monde sans aller par les Américains. In the first week of this campaign, I've laid out clear and detailed plans to relaunch our economy and take back control of our economic destiny. I've announced that we will cut income taxes by 15% to reward hard work and give our people a chance to get ahead. I've announced the Canada First Reinvestment Tax Cut. 0 capital gains tax when you reinvest the proceeds building Canada right here at home. Think about this right now. There is currently no incentive, if you sell an investment today, to reinvest it in Canada. You pay the same capital gains tax if you reinvest here versus sending it abroad. And in fact, because the taxes on your later investment are lower abroad, the business taxes and other